Have you ever seen a puppy get so excited it just looks like it's going to wiggle right out of its skin? Kids can be like that too. Their emotions just come out in movement. Sometimes that's really cute, and sometimes it's just way over the top and out of control. Today, we're talking about tools for building social emotional regulation in children and how we can take advantage of the connection between movement and emotion to open the doors to emotional awareness, expression, and control. This is LD Expert Live. Welcome to LD Expert Live, your place for answers and solutions for learning differences, dyslexia, and auditory and attention challenges. I'm your host, Jill Stowell, founder of Stowell Learning Centers and author of At Wit's End, A Parent's Guide to Ending the Struggle, Tears, and Turmoil of Learning Disabilities. This book will help you understand why some bright children and teens struggle in school and what can be done to change that permanently. To get a free copy, go to parentsatwitsend.com. Let's say hello to Lauren and all of you joining us in the chat this morning. Good morning, Lauren.
Good morning. Hello to everyone who is watching us live. Let us know that you're here and where you're checking in from. We love to see the places all over the country where people are watching us live. Parents, we have a question for you. How do you know when your kids are excited, your child or your children? How do you know when they're excited? I know for me, I'm the mom of two girls. My youngest, Abby, is almost 9 months. And she's just a little ball of energy when she's on tummy time and she gets really excited. She looks like a little seal because she just kind of flops around like that. Is so excited, so excited. And when you're holding her, she does the same thing. She bounces and then she'll bury her head kind of like in my neck. So it's really obvious to see when she's excited. And then my older daughter, Cammie, is 5. And right now we're having a little bit of a hard time getting her to sit still during dinner time because she loves to dance and play. And she just gets so excited and she just moves. It's all in her body. So parents, let us know, post, how do you know when your kids are excited? We have a resource for you. Our Mom Squad is a private Facebook group. That is a place where you can get support and understanding and resources. I post some resources and some helpful strategies for working with your kids related to learning and attention challenges. They're in the guide section, so you can request to join by going to our Facebook page and finding the link, or by searching Facebook group, search the keyword SLC Mom Squad to request to join. We have some people checking in, which is great. Here we go. We have Eileen, Eileen from Ohio, welcome. We have Annie from Pasadena checking in. We have Deanna from West Covina, California checking in. And we have Courtney, first one to answer the question. Nicholas jumps a lot when he's excited. He is also a mover. Definitely understand that. Marcel from Washington near Seattle, welcome. And Courtney from Tampa. Okay, parents. Already, Deanna, let's see. I know my son is excited because he literally jumps and moves. Yep, definitely. So parents, keep checking in. Let us know how you know when your kids are excited, and we'll check back in a little bit.
Thank you, Lauren. If you're just joining us, this is LD Expert Live. I'm your host, Jill Stowell. Our guest today is Tara Eddy. Tara is a licensed educational psychologist. She has a private practice in Los Angeles, California, focusing on therapy and evaluation for children, teens, and young adults. Tara is also the founder and CEO of Feelings in Motion, a company creating social emotional learning products that honor all learning styles. Welcome, Tara.
Thank you so much for having me, Jill. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you. I love the name of your company, Feelings in Motion.
Thank you very much. I was trying to get at all of what you just expressed around when we are children, we do not express mildly. Usually, the way that we feel is quite clear in the way that we physically express ourselves.
That's true, and it's so fun, or can be.
It certainly can be. We're going to talk about that a little bit today.
Yeah. It can be really difficult for children to recognize and express what they're feeling, especially children who have developmental issues. And I really appreciate that you've found some ways to make social emotional learning more accessible to children who learn in different ways. We're going to, go ahead.
No, I was just, thank you. I definitely, that has been the focus of a lot of what Feelings in Motion is doing, is helping to make products that allow access to that learning in ways that feel more fun and feel more exciting, and that don't have some of the barriers. When we learn differently, we often need different ways of receiving the information. And so what has been created through Stomp It Out really helps with that.
Well, we are going to spend the second half of the show talking specifically about Stomp It Out, the game you developed, because it is a great tool for parents, educators, and therapists to use to help kids build emotional awareness and regulation, and it looks really fun. But I want to start out today by talking about this thing that we've had hanging over us for a year. What has COVID done to kids emotionally?
Such a good question, Jill. And I think that it really varies. All of us are in very different situations. And so certainly there are large variances in how this has impacted children. But certainly there's been an increase in symptoms of anxiety, symptoms of depression, that kind of thing. But in terms of things that you often see, difficulty motivating, difficulty concentrating, really missing friends. And one of the things that I've also noticed quite a lot, particularly for really for all kids, but certainly for kids who learn in different ways, is difficulty with executive functioning too. So when you don't have all of the cues of the classroom, when you don't have all the social cues where kids are getting up and doing different things to sort of show everyone that there's a transition that's happening, when you don't have a place to put your work, getting started, knowing when you've actually turned something in, organizing, planning, a lot of those things have been more difficult. And also just concentrating, kids really need to move. They need to move much more than adults. And just sitting in front of a screen, even with some of the unbelievably engaging teachers that I've seen, still just sitting in front of a screen is really quite difficult for kids to do for long time periods.
That is so helpful for people to hear, because we have just heard so much in the past year, parents being concerned about executive function and about attention, and all of that is so true. There are so many cues in the classroom that we just don't really even think about.
Yeah, and so, I know that lots of folks are actually going back to school in some way. Some people are doing hybrid, some people are still online, but it is normal for that to be harder. When you are at home, when you're on a screen, you've really lost a lot of the natural cues in the environment to help children navigate some of those transitions, to help them turn in their work, to help them get started, and organize themselves.
And learning has certainly been impacted as well. And one of the things that we know is that students can't learn well if they're emotionally dysregulated. COVID has made this more evident for sure, but that's true anytime. What would you say about kids who just say, "I hate school"?
I've heard that before. What I would say is that most kids don't actually hate all of school. But what they're trying to communicate is that something isn't working well for them, that something is really bothering them, whether they're feeling socially isolated, if they've had a conflict with a peer, if reading is really hard, if they're constantly being told to work harder or focus more and they don't know how to do that. And what they really need is to break it down so that it feels a little bit more accessible. So the challenge feels a little bit more manageable. And so the more we can help them to build awareness, and the more we can help break down that challenge. So it's not really that I hate school, though kids will say that if they have a fight on the playground, and they'll say that if they got a bad grade on a test, and they'll say that if they were embarrassed because they got the wrong answer in class, right? But they're not going to go right to that exact memory. They're going to go to the global feeling, which is like, I hate school. This was awful. And so the more we can help build their awareness, and help break down that challenge, then it's easier to manage for them, certainly. But also as parents, it's a lot easier to manage. If your child comes up to you and says you hate school, that feels really overwhelming as a parent to tackle. What do I do about that? That's a really big challenge. Whereas if your child comes to you and they say that they've had a challenge with a friend, a fight with a friend, if they tell you that they're worried about math, that's actually quite a lot easier to tackle as a parent. So not only does it feel more approachable as a challenge for the child to deal with, it also is easier as a parent to be able to support them.
Absolutely. And to know now I know how to help a little bit.
Yeah.
When I think about students who have challenges with attention, we sometimes see impulsive behaviors. They just do something without thought. And the adult says, "Why did you do that?" And the child has no idea. Or with a student with learning challenges, maybe they hide their homework or a note from their teacher, and you ask them why they did it, and they get defensive or they don't really know. These are coping behaviors. And as you said, if we're really going to help them, we kind of have to break it down and look under the behavior or the response and kind of gently dig out what that real issue is all about.
That's right. That's right. And we can help them quite a lot with that. And eventually, after we've helped them out with that quite a bit, they end up learning how to identify that themselves. But it takes some time and it takes some guidance. And certainly some of the questions that we can ask and some of the conversations that we create can help them with that.
And I think that's a great point. Taking the time to really process through things with kids eventually helps them to build their own executive function and their own awareness so that they can do that themselves, which of course is what we want.
Okay.
Parents really want to interact with their children and support them emotionally, but kids aren't always that forthcoming. I'm sure every parent has experienced this. Your son or daughter comes home from school and you say, "How was school today?" And the student says, "Fine." Is this just a kid thing, or is there something that parents are inadvertently doing that makes it hard for kids to express their feelings?
Such a good question. So certainly with that question is really broad, and kids don't usually know what you're asking. And so typically what they're responding to, they respond with sort of a social nicety in the same way that if someone asks me how I am, I'm going to say I'm fine. Because the response actually has lots of different parts. So it's a little bit more complicated. I'm not sure what you're trying to get at. And so, certainly, and this is talked about a lot, where if we ask open-ended questions, like what was the most exciting thing about your day, that sometimes that can be helpful. However, for kids with learning differences, or for kids who just get sort of overwhelmed by how big the question is, sometimes we need to start with something that's easy to answer. Like, did you have science today? And they'll say yes or no. And if it's a yes, then you can get excited about that, particularly if you sort of choose something that you know that they like. Ask them if that class is something that they had today. They say yes. And then you can ask some open-ended questions, because then you've got them in a conversation, starting with something they felt like they could answer. And so if you feel like you are starting to ask these open-ended questions and they're just not really responding to them, or that's okay, yes, and they're not responding any more than that, then sometimes having a question that gets at something that they really like, that's really easy to answer, can help to open up some dialogue around how school really went.
Wow, that is great advice. Just asking a question, a yes, no, that's super easy to start with. Then they have a little bit of success and it opens up the door.
Yeah.
I know you have talked also And I definitely saw this with my kids when they were growing up, that when you're playing or when you're just in a really, kind of easy, neutral time, also is a good time to, kind of get conversations going.
Absolutely. So the question of sort of how school went, I sort of picture as a drive home in the car. But the thing that can be really useful is like kids are exhausted at the end of the day anyway, and they need a little bit of a break and a sort of time away from school. But then when you're after that and you're at home, even things that are simple like asking questions while you're playing a game of Uno, blowing up a balloon and tossing it back and forth, trying to keep it in the air while you're asking some questions about school, then the questions aren't intimidating anymore and it becomes a lot easier to have a conversation. So exactly, Joe, I think that you really hit on something really important, which is that kids respond to play. They want to play, they want to engage with you and have fun with you. And they're not always wanting to sort of sit down and have this like long dialogue about this day that they just had, but they'll probably tell you some funny story that happened at lunch or the silly thing that happened at recess or this really frustrating thing that happened during math while you're playing. Because it just feels a little bit more accessible for them to have that kind of conversation.
Absolutely. I think, especially as our kids get a little bit older, but when we just start asking questions, they kind of feel like it's an interrogation and they're going to, kind of back off. What else can parents do to make it easier for kids to express their emotions?
That's a really good question. And I think there are sort of several components to that. And one is sort of setting up an environment that helps them to generally feel a little bit more successful. So there are just fewer battles. There's how we respond generally how kids are responded to in the moment when they're having a hard time. And then there's the question, what we were just talking about, which is sort of like, how do we, when everything's calm, how do we get them talking? And I do think that we know our kids well, and we know the things that work for them, and making sure that it's not a constant battle really helps to just take the temperature down so this kind of dialogue can actually take place. And then, when kids are in the middle of something that's hard, and this actually kind of spans the ages, from a 3-year-old having a meltdown to a 9-year-old having a meltdown, when a lot of the time we want to try to fix it. And sometimes if we just add a first step of compassion for what's going on, of assuming good, of assuming that children, there's sort of a great saying that, kids will do well when they can. And a lot of the time when kids are having a meltdown, it's because they have these big feelings that they need to get out. And if we just acknowledge for a minute before we kind of move on to helping, if we acknowledge for a moment that whatever it is hard, that it's hard to not have something go your way, that it's hard to work on something and feel like you don't understand it. It's hard when someone says something rude to you that doesn't make you feel good, that those experiences are difficult to have. And then we can set boundaries if that's kind of what the challenge is about, help them problem solve if that's what the issue is. But meeting them with compassion first, assuming they're not trying to manipulate, that they're having a difficult time, and meet them there first. And then we can set those boundaries. Then we can work on problem solving. Because the thing is that we have all these things we want to teach. And I know that I'm a mom of 2, and you always want to help them be like the best little version of themselves that they can be. And there's so much that you want to help them with. And sometimes that can get in the way of just sort of allowing them to have a feeling about something and then helping them. And when they feel heard, when they feel seen, when they feel like you get the feeling, even if what they're doing isn't okay, often it calms it down a little bit anyway. And certainly when you're sort of playing the long game as a parent, that whatever it is that was going on, that they know that they were seen in you, they know that you understand them, even if what they were doing wasn't okay in the moment. And that has really huge impact on your ability to see yourself as okay, to know that you have experiences, you have feelings, that all of those things are okay, and that you'll be sort of sat with through that and get to the other side with some tools and some things that you can do. So I generally think that when you look at those 3 things, when you look at the environment, when you look at how we respond and moments that are hard. And also, I will just say to the parents, like, no one responds to meltdowns really, really well every time. So just to be clear on that, it's much more thematic, that they learn from the moments when we can be with them and show up with them that way. And then also how we open up this dialogue, how we play with them while they're communicating, when they are calm, and how we create opportunity to have those conversations in the calm and fun moments as well.
Wow, that was just packed. You said so many great things there. I think we really do. We find this as we're working with our students. We have to start where they are and then gently guide them to where we want them to be. If we start where we are, there's a big disconnect there. Mm-hmm. So I love that. And you talked about parents modeling calmness and compassion for their children. One of the ways that we can do this is by consciously using a lower, slower voice. At the Learning Center, we call this a kinesthetic or feeling voice. We have these different modalities of processing information: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and a lower pitch and slower rate will cause the listener to just kind of shift into that feeling mode. So we use that kinesthetic voice when we're working with core learning skills, movements, or doing attention training, because it helps students to feel and be more aware of what their body is doing. Well, the same is really true in conversation. That calm, relaxed, kinesthetic voice can make it easier to think about and express feelings.
I love that, Jill. I also think it does precisely what you want in those sort of more difficult moments, whether it's a difficult listening moment or a difficult emotional moment, which is slow down. Mm-hmm. I think that a lot of the time, even as a parent, I notice this in myself as well, we want to fix it, make it better, and there's this sort of hurried feeling about mm-hmm. it. And the more, if I can take a deep breath and slow the whole thing down, it always goes better. Mm-hmm. And what you're describing in both the way that you speak, when you do that, it naturally slows everything down. So I love that tactic.
We talk about preparing children for changes and new routines and things like that. Well, as parents, we kind of have to prepare our mind in advance, because as you said, when kids are having a meltdown or they're screaming in a store, or, there is a huge sense of urgency to fix this. And so just sort of preparing ourselves in advance that we want to take a breath and use a calm, kinesthetic voice, makes it a little bit easier to start to do that if we just kind of get in that mind frame when we're not in the midst of a meltdown. If you're just joining us, this is LD Expert Live. I'm Jill Stowell, founder of Stowell Learning Centers, and my guest today is licensed educational psychologist Tara Eddy. We're going to check in with Lauren and our viewers, and then we're going to talk about Stomp It Out, a fun game and wonderful resource for helping children build emotional awareness, expression, and control.
Hello.
Hello.
So we have a lot of people checking in. We have Veronica from Orange County, California, and Donna from Illinois, Janet from Fullerton, California, Boots from Las Vegas, Nevada, welcome, and Althea from Orlando, Florida, and then several parents responding to our question of how they know when their kids are excited. Annie says, my son is excited when he dances. Yep. I have one of those. I have a dancer at home. And Eileen saying, I know my daughter is excited when she talks louder and wiggles more, definitely. And Janet saying, she gets hyper. Yeah. So we definitely see that it comes on, in our kids' bodies. Donna was chiming in, really kind of responding to earlier when you were talking about kids in COVID times with virtual learning are missing out on kind of environmental learning and environmental social cues. And I used to call it peripheral learning, of kind of just like being in a space with people, and there's routines and structures, there's learning that happens there. And so she was saying, definitely, you know, motivation, cues, movement, all of that is kind of impacted when you're not together. So that was, she related to that. We have Shirley with a question. When we're talking about communication and getting kids to express their feelings, what about kids diagnosed with receptive, expressive language disorders, who is verbal and to needs and wants, but has difficulty with social conversations? A lot of times she will get upset and emotional, but cannot tell you the reason. We are using AAC to help with core vocabulary. I'm not familiar what AAC is.
It's assistive technology.
Okay.
Yeah, and assistive technology is a wonderful resource. And also, you know, one of the things that we were talking about around kind of responding first with just like, it's okay to be frustrated and just being there. That's sort of a nice first step for any child, regardless of their ability to communicate in a moment. However, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later on, and there's sort of the game that I've created that has some massive visuals, but it doesn't always have to be that. If there's a way for her to show you rather than tell you how she's feeling, and to have that really accessible. So there could be feelings on the fridge that she can point to. There could be little feeling dolls. There could be the game sort of like I've created where there are mats that are on the floor that she could go to. So having all sorts of ways for her to show you she's frustrated, and for you to be able to meet her there, that's really useful. Again, you know, the assistive technology is really useful for her to help to get to the why, so that you can move forward after that. But at least for that beginning, so that she knows you understand the feeling, and showing that you're just that you're there with her, that you're responding to it, that you understand that she's feeling frustrated about something, and that you'll help her to communicate it. And again, I think what Jill was talking about too, that can really be helpful here is to help with the slowdown. You know, sometimes it's like, there's this need and I need it, and I now I can't communicate it well, and then she's frustrated, and then we're frustrated because you want to help her and you want to meet her needs. And so the more we can slow it down, acknowledge, like, I know that you're frustrated, and we'll go here, we'll go over to the iPad and let's go figure out what it is, and we'll do that together. That generally that can be really helpful.
You know, I just love what you're saying, Tara, about acknowledging where they are and coming alongside them. It just gives me this picture that it's helping kids to know whatever they're feeling is okay. I mean, we, of course, you know, want to help them to learn to control it and to redirect, but if they're feeling it, they're feeling it. And so I just love that mental picture I'm getting as you're talking about coming alongside and letting it be okay to be right where you are right now. And then we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was even just thinking for that one, you know, child, that maybe you guys could come up with a little symbol for like something that you could do, like a little hand movement, or a little something that you guys can do that's a symbol of we're gonna go over to the iPad now, to show her, like, now we've done the I understand that you're really frustrated. Together, let's go see why, and have some sort of little thing that she can, that's a like direct acknowledgement that it's time to go. It's time to go figure out what it is. I have this little system with my daughter where if she's trying to like interrupt me in the middle of a conversation, I just give her my finger and she pushes her little finger on mine and she just holds it there so that she knows I know she wants to say something and I just need 30 more seconds. I need a minute. But what I mean by a little symbol is something that's physical, something that doesn't require any language, that you guys develop together. And you do it over and over to sort of show her, like, this means this. And that way she can show you, like, this is, we can go over here together and we can figure out what it is. And then she can go over and use the assistive technology to show you what it is that she wants.
It's a great suggestion. I love that because of my, you know, now that I'm on Zoom all day, my 5-year-old constantly, one, she wants to be in the shot, there's that. She wants to say hi.
And she is
so,
very cute. You have to admit.
right. And she knows it. And so, but like waiting, I love that like just, that it's not just me telling her to be quiet. It's I'm acknowledging you, and she needs to work on her own kind of impulsivity. I love that strategy. I'm going to start using it myself. I will say, when you validated the fact that not all parents handle meltdowns well, every single time, thank you. Because I mean, that for me, just in my own journey as a parent with my daughter, I mean, it's like, that is the most dysregulating thing I think for a parent, is when your kid is not behaving for some reason. I mean, your child may struggle with learning or attention, but behavior, man, that gets you as a parent right in your gut and can cause a lot of dysregulation for us.
It really does. And I will share something just briefly on that has been a sort of interesting new realization, that I think the dysregulation that it causes for us is actually about our own, like, what does it mean if my child is so upset? What does that mean? There's like a personalization related to, like, what does that mean about me? Like, am I not helping enough? Am I not this enough? And really they're just having a hard time like everybody else. And we all have hard days and hard moments and bad moods, and we haven't eaten enough and we haven't slept well enough, and we don't want to rush to bed, and we're not ready to do this. And I kind of wanted to do it in that way. And adults have all of these strategies and all of this experience, and also this sort of social container from experience that just don't really have, and they express themselves fully in big, loud ways. And there's not anything wrong with that. That's how they do that at first. And we help build skills to help them to express themselves in ways that are healthy and productive, and how to communicate and all of that. But the meltdown is not because of your parenting. Like, that's something that I think, when we are talking about compassion for kids in those moments, it starts with compassion for ourselves. Like, you're okay, your child is okay, you are a wonderful parent, and they're having a hard moment. And that's where we are. There's nothing else. It's not like you didn't do something wrong. There's nothing wrong with them. They're just having a feeling, and their feeling looks like this, and sometimes having that center, at least having it in the back of your head when you can help with that slowdown, can help sort of meet them there, and can help make you feel a little bit better when you're doing it, because it's overwhelming when it's overwhelming all the time. But I think it is also overwhelming, certainly if it's happening in some sort of a social or public situation. Right. Absolutely. Thank you. That is, I mean, just for that forgiveness for us as parents, I mean, absolutely. That just, I can even feel that kind of weight, that relief of like, yeah, I mean, it's not me, and I don't have to be hard on myself. This is developmentally, she doesn't have the skills, and this is part of that process, and it's not a reflection of how great a mom I am. So, I know you wanted one other quick thing there that I just want to mention quickly, is that this happens really, meltdowns happen really commonly with little kids, but they also happen with older kids, and particularly with kids with learning differences. There's often a very big difference between how a child shows up cognitively and how they show up emotionally. And so sometimes remembering, like, my child might be 9, but emotionally they're 6. And so it's okay for this to be going on, and I'm still a good parent. They're still okay, and I'm helping them through it. Because sometimes I think when kids are having some of those issues later on, even more of that kind of, oh my gosh, what am I doing? What are they doing? Are they okay? Happens, and it's just that there's a difference between where they are cognitively and where they are emotionally, and we're just showing up where they are and helping them through it. That's great advice. Courtney is really resonating with that as parents. And parents have the control to say, this is what I'm doing and what I want. Giving choices helps too. Yes, having the compassion and understanding. And saying, love this. Excellent. Nicholas had a bad experience today at OT. The expectation for him was too high. And then he was punished because he did not perform right. So upsetting for him. He likes to get his
lolly, I guess a lollipop at the end, etc. You know, maybe she's typing really furiously as she's relating to this of like, you know, that sometimes our kiddos are disappointed in themselves and they want this end result and can't even kind of express that when, especially when they do struggle. We have, let's see, some questions. Veronica, what proactive strategies can you offer before the behavior, such as identifying triggers?
Okay, this is such a wonderful question, Veronica. One of the things that we were talking about a little earlier on sort of how to sort of help your kids to communicate with you, a lot of that, some of those environmental shifts that we make speak really to this too. So if you, now we've built some awareness, now we understand what some of the challenges are, we do want to make some environmental shifts to help kids to feel more successful. So if you know that writing is a real challenge, someone I think in the comments was talking about choices, and it is really useful to give some kids the feeling of control when they feel out of control because something is hard for them. So if my child really has difficulty with writing, I might have sort of some scaffolds actually educationally to help them with that. Maybe there's word banks, maybe there's story maps, maybe we've had a good conversation about it first, maybe I'm helping with the writing. But in addition to that, maybe they get to write with some like massively large pencil, or maybe they get to, you know, take a clipboard outside and lay down on the floor while they're writing, you know, where we're giving them some choices for how they're engaging in the things that are the most difficult for them. Absolutely. The other thing is really interspersing activities. So if we know that at 9 a.m. they're doing something really challenging, how about like after that, let's do something that's a little bit easier for them before we dive into something that's a little bit more difficult. Also, it's okay for kids to need to take some breaks from the things that are difficult. We want to get them back into what they're working on. So we don't want them to be like incredibly long breaks, but we can move around, we can help out with things, whether that's in the classroom or at home. Everyone's in a little bit of a different learning environment at the moment. But when we identify the things that are the most challenging, and what that can also be sometimes fairly simple. So maybe at 10 a.m. every day, they're actually pretty hungry, they're not eating, and so they're a little bit more on edge. And then also they're doing something academically that's really challenging for them. Understanding those things and also talking to them about them if they're ready. If they're very resistant to that, you can start sort of setting the environment up for them, and over time kind of build their awareness and their own ability to help with that, depending on their age. But absolutely, environmental triggers are enormous. It's really useful to know what are the things that cause some of these behaviors, so that you don't need to get rid of every single thing that's frustrating. Kids need to learn how to manage. However, we don't want to make it massively frustrating at every moment, you know, and in that sort of phrase of pick your battles, you know, it's really important to create an environment where kids feel successful. They will work harder, they will be more motivated, they will do better when they're not in a situation where at every turn they're hitting something that's frustrating.
Makes sense. And then right before we get to your game, because I'm really excited to hear about that, what about older kids or even young adults? Sue is asking, how can we help our daughter with learning disabilities in her early 20s to make conversation?
Sure. So there are certainly groups and things like that that are supportive, but I'd say that just on sort of an easier level, just on a more day-to-day level, if there is something that your daughter is totally interested in, that's where I would begin. And if there's one person that could join her with that, one peer, or even a group. So if someone is into art, having an art class, if they're into sports, having a sport that they're playing, so that there's already something easy to talk about. There's also an activity already, which allows for the conversation to be a little bit easier. But in addition to that, so that it's not all conversation. So if having some conversations and the back and forth and reciprocity and all that stuff is a little bit more difficult, then having the activity allows something else to be done that's social and connective, so that all the pressure isn't on the conversation. And so I would always start with, what are her absolute favorite things? What does she totally love doing? and then finding some connection points, some either groups or relationships where that can be shared, and begin there. If a young adult is a little bit more shy, starting with one or two people will probably be better than a large group, so that you're not sort of adding on some of the kind of social anxiety. If it's really just about practicing the conversation, then I would definitely start with something she loves, and start with, you know, a couple people or a small group that all love the same things, and she won't, in that environment, be the only one who needs to start a conversation.
Great suggestion. Okay. Parents, keep posting questions and comments. I do want to hear about this game, Stomp It Out. So we'll check back in one more time before the end of the show.
Great. Wow, Tara, you've just given us so much. It's amazing. And it's such fun talking to you. So let's talk about the kinesthetic game that you created called Stomp It Out.
Sure. Well, here it is. You see it there. So this is the game. When you open it, you'll have instructions and then some large feeling mats, and I'll pull some of these out. But these are sort of unlike any other game. This is sort of the, I don't want to say anti-board game because I love board games, but it kind of is the anti-board game, because kids are up and they're moving the entire time. So there are feeling mats. There are 10 of them. They look like this. This one is confused. There are 4 diverse characters that are depicted in a variety of different feeling states. So you have angry, happy, proud, sad, worried, confused, embarrassed, lonely, jealous. So I was feeling pretty comfortable and safe, and then disappointed. And so there are feeling mats that can be used for young kids who are just sort of learning an emotional vocabulary, and then for older kids who have a little bit more of a vocabulary. You take these mats and they're all around the room. And so with little kids, you're using maybe 3 mats. With older kids, you could use all 10 if you'd like. And then there are situation cards. So when you open up the box, there are 5 packs of situation cards in here, and then 1 pack of problem-solving cards. And the situation cards are all categorized. So there are social situations, and then there's a grade estimate on the bottom, so you can sort of pull out ahead of time the things that you want to work on, and also based on the age range of your child. There are positive situations, there are academic ones, there are ones that are all about managing responsibility and limits that are set. A lot of kids have some difficulty with that. And then there are cards that are related to changes and transitions. Some of those that are more kind of day-to-day, managing changes in schedule and that kind of thing. But it also has larger issues. When a grandparent passes away, it has situations that are related to some of the experiences that kids have had during the pandemic with online learning, not seeing family, not seeing some of their friends, so they can process some of those experiences. So the way that it works is you pick out, the cards that make the most sense for your child, and then you lay the mats around the room. And you can help them to make sure that they actually can identify the feeling on the mats. That's an important thing to do first, depending on where your child is emotionally. And then the really fun part starts. So you read a card and you instruct them to engage in some movement. So they can dance. If they're little, they can be a cat or a bunny or whatever animal they want to be. Older kids tend to dance, crab walk, skip, to the mat of their choice. And when you look at these mats, they all have these black corners, and the black corners are meant for them to put their feet on when they land on a mat. And the idea there is that while helping them to identify how they would feel in that situation, learn to express how they're feeling in that situation, they're also learning body awareness. How can they move in really silly ways without bumping into somebody else? That's if you're playing in a group. And also, as they play together, kids land in different places because the same situation doesn't make a different child feel the same way. So, everyone feels a little bit differently. Trying something new might make one child feel really excited or happy and make another child feel nervous. So they move to the mats, and then you can talk about where they landed. If you're working with children who are less verbal, they actually don't have to verbally communicate. They can just move to the mat to show that they understand, and you can help them build that vocabulary when they land. And so that's super fun. They are super engaged. They are silly and having a great time. And what I have found in all of the testing of the product before it was developed, and in every population that it has been tested with, and certainly in groups and individually in my own practice, is that kids have a way easier time building skills. They have a way easier time identifying how they feel, learning how to talk about those things, learning to feel safe talking about those things, when they are engaging in this kind of fun, silly, playful movement. So that's really wonderful about it. And then there's also a problem-solving component. So once you get to a spot where you feel like the children that you're playing with are your own kids, that they are understanding how to identify the feeling, and also that they're able to share about it fairly well, then you might come up with some things where you're like, gosh, this situation actually did come up recently, this did. And so you maybe pull out 4 or 5 of the situation cards and bring the problem-solving card, and you sit in the middle of the circle and try to figure out what solution might work given the situation that you're in. So for instance, if I'm upset because I didn't get a good grade in math, or a presentation didn't go the way that I wanted, or a writing assignment was hard, taking deep breaths is a really useful thing to calm your body down, but it doesn't change the fact that math was hard, right? So there's another plan that needs to be developed there. And so it's helping kids really come up with what would work in the situation and what would help fully. So what are the things that kind of calm my body down, but then really what's tangible? What can I do about it? And it just gives an easy way for parents, for educators, for therapists to be able to help kids begin this communication around what's going on for them, really breaking it down, and then giving them some tools for what to do moving forward.
Gosh, I had so many thoughts listening to you describe this, but I was thinking with the problem solving, sometimes you have to be able to take a different perspective to solve a problem, or to just even understand where another person is coming from. And I was thinking, gosh, playing this in a group, it's so visual that different people respond to things differently. So I think that's a huge piece of learning, and a really great way to kick off a conversation about that. But even if you were playing by yourself, I mean, like with an adult and a child, I could see how you could, say, think about Sally in your class, or your friend next door, or whatever. How do you think she would respond to this question, and recognize when you have these mats in different places that different people would land in different places. A lot of times our kids don't recognize that if it's not what they're feeling, they don't get that anybody else has a different one.
Yeah, it is one of the real benefits when you do play it in a group, where you just have this large scale visual of, we all read the same thing and everyone went to different places. And it's a really easy way to begin that conversation in a tangible way and to create a conversation. So, I felt nervous about it because doing something new, sometimes I don't know if I'm going to like that thing, or I don't know if I'm going to be good at it. And someone else might say, I love doing new things. I just tried swimming and I was really good at it. And, so everyone comes at these experiences, from a different lens. And it's really helpful for kids to not just have the words. So one of the things that really went into the design of this game is that there is movement, there is auditory as a cue, and there's really large scale visuals. And then in addition to that, if you want, if your child has a harder time with impulse control, or like when to stop and start, and certainly for younger kids also, you can play music when it's time to move, and you can turn music off when it's time to land. And so you're giving them all of these cues to be successful while they're playing. And then it's not stressful to answer the question. I remember there was a boy when I was designing this for actually a particular group of students that I really needed it for at the time. A boy that had a lot of difficulty with regulation was playing the game. And he's a child that would get, a long time ago, he's doing great now, but where he would get really upset when you would bring up topics that were more challenging, particularly anything that was actually challenging for him. And he would have very, very large emotional reactions to that. And when he was playing the game, I said, normally these questions would make me so mad, but this is so much fun. Can we keep playing? And it was definitely one of the moments when I knew that I needed to create this on a larger scale so that more kids could have access to it.
Wow, what a great piece of awareness for him. That's amazing.
It really does. It takes away the vulnerability, when you're trying to come up with how I'm going to move over to this map to show that makes me worried or that makes me angry. The focus isn't entirely on the feeling, so you're able to communicate it a little bit better, and it creates a bridge. And a lot of kids need a bridge. It's not always easy to admit that something makes you nervous. It's a little easier to say it makes you mad. It's not as easy to say that you're disappointed in yourself or something else or someone else, right? And so when we're working on some of those things, having that movement and that silliness and that play as a tool to get there is enormously helpful.
Huge. We've been talking about how our kids show their excitement through their bodies. Well, moving really supports everything that we do. And so those, the fact that it's a movement game and that it's supposed to be silly movements, I mean, right there, it just pulls your guard down and your resistance down a lot, pulls you out of that intense thinking brain.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think Stomp It Out is a wonderful tool. We just got ours for the learning centers. And so we're really excited to get started with it. And now talking to you some more about it, I can just see so many applications.
There are a lot of applications. It can be used with any number of kids who meet their learning in different ways. Any, children who are developmentally in different places, because it's really customizable. I mean, every situation you can write your own, so you can really make it about what your child is going through. But also you can use 2 maths, you can use 3, you can use 10. You can really meet your child where they are. And particularly, we were talking about this earlier about sort of how we sometimes have difficulty responding to our kids in their difficult moments because it's so hard. This is a nice avenue to create space to validate them. Mm-hmm. So because it's a calmer moment, because it's not in the middle of the heat, it's not the heated moment, but it is a time when they can tell you that they were frustrated when this happened or that happened. And it allows you to then say, gosh, that would be so frustrating. I totally get that. And it gives you platform for that, which can help because we're not always going to respond in the moment in the way that we wish we had, because it's difficult to do that. And so it does also provide us with a way to do that while they're also building these skills that are so critical for their ability to learn, their ability to show up, their ability to feel good about themselves, to feel like how they feel is okay, that people get it, and also to build some tools for what to do when they're having a hard time.
Yeah, and it, for some kids, it's just going to really start to build an awareness and give them a label for what they're feeling. And then, playing the game allows them to rehearse it, and as we rehearse things, then we get better at expressing it at a different time. So, absolutely. Fantastic tool. This is LD Expert Live. I'm Jill Stowell, founder of Stowell Learning Centers, and we've been talking with licensed educational psychologist Tara Eddy about tools for building social emotional awareness and expression in children. Let's check back in with Lauren and our viewers and subscribers in the chat before we wrap up.
Sounds like a really fun game. I'm excited to try. Let's do a staff meeting or something like that. I think that would be a really good icebreaker for our staff to even get in on. So excited to try that.
And we got with the dance moves.
Yes. Do it. We have and some viewers checking in. Donna, sounds like an awesome game. So many uses. Deborah Anafarian, who is a former guest, she's with Helping the Behaviorally Challenging Child. Let's say love that more professionals like you, Tara, are working with emotions and understanding the neuroscience of emotions to maximize potential instead of trying to extinguish the big emotions and seeing them as trying to get or get out of something. Sad face. Stomp It Out looks so amazing to help understand feelings and emotions and solve problems. Thank you. So yeah, definitely just dealing with those emotions. Shirley checking in, great concept. My daughter's OT has been working with her using zones of regulation, which we've heard of before. Maybe this can help make it more visual for her with the movements included. Yeah, definitely. And we have Andrea asking about her son. I just joined, have a question. Social emotional is a huge struggle for my almost 5-year-old boy. We get tantrums when we try to transition from a non-preferred task. At the park with peers, he has a hard time when they don't want to play with him. He has a hard time if he wants to go on the swing and it's taken, etc. He has severe ADHD. How can we help him learn positive ways to deal with this struggle? And then she adds, I have to add that he tries the non-preferred task most of the time. It's just to get him to stay on task for the activity, even if we say one more and then we'll do whatever thing that you want, is kind of what they have been trying so far.
Yeah, so I definitely using the let's come up with a plan. So after we've kind of acknowledged that, like, oh, that sounds really frustrating, and you've kind of been there with him and had that sort of feeling be okay. The next thing to do is, what can we do about it? And try to get, it's really useful to get kids to come up with some ideas. So, I mean, and so they might have some thoughts on, well, maybe I can, go on the slide, or maybe I can do this other thing first, and then this after. The other thing that can sometimes, it depends on your child's temperament. And so certainly some kids will respond better to humor than others. But certainly after the acknowledgement of the feeling that's difficult, and, after that point where they feel understood and heard for the thing that they're going through, sometimes it can be fun to be like, oh gosh, the swings, they're never going to be open again. What are we going to do? And then the kids will get into a play mindset with you, or like no, mom, like they're going to be open in a minute, and they'll solve it for themselves. There's there's choices that can be provided by you if your child responds to a little bit more of a structured approach. There's helping them problem solve with you. So what can we do about this? What can we figure out? Is there anything else that we can do here? And then helping them come up with some ideas for what they can do. If something's, for instance, not available. But it also works for for transitions. There are definitely that sort of make a plan can be really helpful. So, and some of this is about environment and some of it is responding in the moment. But if we know that, like, a child's on an iPad, for instance, and we know that it's going to be dinner time in 10 minutes, it is really annoying to be doing right in the middle of something and have someone tell you that you can't do it anymore. So it's really useful to sort of set up, at the next stopping point, we're going to stop this because of dinner. Where do you think that is? Where's a point where you think you could pause, and help them plan that out to transition? And then if it's still difficult to do the transition, that's where you can also make another plan. So I know it's so frustrating to stop doing something that you want. You don't even really feel hungry right now. I know that. We need to have dinner. So that's where, like, the boundary is, right? But maybe we can come up with a really good plan to finish this after dinner. Where do you want me to put the iPad so that we remember our plan? So and then you have to follow through on the plan. So that's the other part. You do have to follow through on the plan. But sometimes that can be helpful to get through those kind of sticky moments, is both the prep ahead of time. And you can even do that in the car ride to the park. Like, okay, so I know you really want to go on the swings. What are some other things that you want to do at the park? And maybe even talking about, like, okay, well, if the slide is busy, what are we going to do? If the swings are busy, and helping them just come up with what some of those other ideas are can be helpful then when you're in the moment, because they've already had some of that time to think through what they might do.
Great suggestions. Getting them to think about the future and problem solve and kind of anticipate those what if moments. It's great. And Andrea says, awesome, thank you. Really helpful. We're getting we have Marcel saying we have your game and it's really fantastic. She's a mom of 2 kids, 9 and 11. Love the real life scenarios and problem solving conversation cards.
Hi, Marcel.
Great. And Lan is asking, what age group is this for, the game? My son is 12.
So it's generally for kids between the ages of 5 and 12. But the question that I would have in terms of whether or not he's sort of too old for the game would be much more around where he is emotionally, because there are tons of kids who are 12 cognitively and a little bit younger in terms of their emotional awareness or their ability to communicate how they're feeling and related to the regulation as well. And so, sort of depending on what's going on there, I would say that I have, it was actually tested and used with middle school students as well. On the younger end though. And again, that really depends on just where your child is emotionally. There are situation cards in here that are definitely applicable for sort of your tween time period around, friends have apps that I don't have on my phone, things that are irrelevant for a 5-year-old that are quite relevant for a 12-year-old. So there are situations that are in there that are useful. The characters are kind of a late elementary age, so they're not super babyish, but they don't look like teenagers either.
Great. What a great resource for those tweens, for those early middle school, because that is a really tough age that I know, just kind of developmentally, it seems to be normal for kids to kind of shut down and kind of, hold on to their emotions, and what a great resource for them. So
absolutely. Those kids are kind of in between being a child and being more grown up, and they go back and forth too. So I can imagine making this a fun thing, especially if you get really silly with it.
That's it. They want to be silly. They really want to be silly. And also in the way that we've talked about how sometimes at that age, some kids like to talk a lot, but a lot of kids absolutely don't. And what's nice about the game is they don't even have to really talk. They could just do the movement if that's where they are. Or some kids will, once they start moving, then they'll start talking and they won't stop talking. But, you can really meet them where they are. And so, for a 12-year-old, you would really just want to see where your child is emotionally and then make a decision from there.
Makes sense. Parents, if we didn't get to your questions today, I think I got to everyone another place, or if you have follow-up questions, if you're watching this on the recording, join our Mom Squad. That is our private Facebook group. That is a group of parents with kids and teens with learning and attention challenges. We support each other. We post resources, follow-up discussions if you're wanting to just get answers from other parents who get it. Mom Squad is the place to be. You can find it on our Facebook page or by going to Facebook groups and searching the keywords SLC Mom Squad to request to join. Another resource is our Peace meeting. That is our virtual parent support group meeting. We meet once a month on a variety of topics. And we go through Jill's book At Wit's End and discuss kind of all those underlying learning skills and how they play out in our kids. Our next meeting is Thursday, May 20th at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And our topic this month, or for May, is auditory processing. And that is a huge topic. I know when we were in person, that was always the meeting where we had to bring in extra chairs, and a lot of people attended that. So make sure you register. Go to stowellcenter.com/peace to get the Zoom link in order to join. I look forward to seeing you. And thank you so much, Tara, for sharing. This is an amazing resource. I can't wait to play. Like I said, I really do think, this could be an icebreaker for, especially us, we're working with kids and understanding that flexibility of here's the situation, and different people can respond differently or feel different emotions related to a singular topic. I think it would be a great icebreaker for when we can start having staff meetings in person again. So really excited to try it.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me. It's really been a pleasure.
Yeah. Well, you have just given us so many gems today, Tara. Thank you so much. what last thoughts do you have for our viewers today?
I would say that I think some of the things we talked about today, particularly right now around self-compassion, are huge and really important to remember as a parent. This has been a really difficult year or so, and we're all doing our very, very best. And you are a wonderful parent. And the things that we've talked about today are just things to try, tools to try to help with some challenges that might be going on, and also just to build some skills, even if challenges aren't as apparent. So compassion for you, and certainly the reminder that kids want to do well when they can, and a lot of it is around just being present with the feelings that they have, helping them build that awareness so they don't feel so scared by the feelings that they have, that they know that they're just sort of a part of being human, and then giving them some tools. And so I think that those primary takeaways would be what I would bring with you. The other things, I suppose, are that play and fun and games can really open up some dialogue if you feel like that's been sort of a sticking point for you and your child, or it's been a little bit harder to get them to communicate. That a lot of the time, the sort of serious conversation can be a little bit more difficult for them, and you can get so much more while you're playing, whether it's Stomp It Out or whether it's a game at home. It can really help them to open up and to talk to you.
Well, thank you so much for all of that and for joining us today. I love the work that you're doing for kids and families. I think Stomp It Out is brilliant. Here is Tara's contact information for both her private practice and for Stomp It Out. Tara's private practice is in Southern California, and Stomp It Out is available on Amazon. So it's available to everyone. This is a good tool for parents, educators, and therapists. This is LD Expert Live, your place for answers and solutions for learning disabilities, dyslexia, and attention challenges. We're live every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific. Next Tuesday, Alexis Casillas, attorney and legal director of Learning Rights Law Center, will be with us to talk about things parents need to know about IEPs, 504 plans, advocating for your child, and the transition to college and post-high school life. She has a wealth of knowledge, and this is going to be a really good time to get some of your questions answered. Be sure to join us next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Stowell Learning Centers are open for remote sessions and screenings. We're also seeing students on site with all of the COVID precautions. We work with children and adults doing targeted brain training to improve auditory processing, dyslexia, attention, thinking, and learning. As you begin planning for summer, remember that summer intensive programs are a great way to give your child or teen a real boost before the next school year and to make up for lost instruction and close up those academic gaps. If you would like a free consultation for yourself or your child, give us a call or visit our website at stowellcenter.com. Thank you again, Tara. Thank you to all of you who joined us today live or on the replay. If you're finding these programs helpful, be sure to share on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube. We'll see you next week.